Jupiter's Legacy is finally here. Mark Millar, Frank Quietly Comics, has smashed its way onto Netflix, giving The Boys a run for its money. I would love to say it's 10 stars because this is one of my favourite comics ever. I think there was one key problem that stops this TV show from becoming the absolute monster beast successful TV show that it could be, but we'll get to that later. We're going to go through all the individual parts like cast, actors and different things about the show and the comic, and then I'll come straight back to what I felt the problem was. So, summary. Sheldon Sampson, on his road to discover his secret powers and then having kids and how you deal with kids. You've seen the summary, you know exactly what the show is about if you're going to watch it. He's a dad who's a superhero, who's got a family and friends of superheroes who are getting old, getting on a bit, and they have to pass their powers on to the kids, and how the kids doing, and how does opinions change over the course of time, what does politics change over the course of time. So many good things that apply to so much politics and things today, the culture issues today that I'm probably not going to bother getting into because it's just a TV show, but it does question a lot of morals and a lot of ethics in one big running theme, which is very poignant for another very famous superhero cape wearing person. Now, Jupiter's Legacy hits the ground running in the first episode. In the first episode we have quite a lot of build up, a lot of tension, a lot of discovering who these characters are, discovering who Brandon is, who Chloe is, who Lady Liberty, Mum, Dad, who everyone is, Uncle, everyone. We get a little snippet of everyone and see the direction, and finishing it off with possibly one of the best fight scenes that's in the whole series. It's stupidly good, stupidly good. It's just so exciting and brutal and just, oh, yeah, please watch it. If you just get to the end of the first episode, and if you don't like that, don't watch the rest, but it's really, really good. Now, on the other hand, that first episode did set the ball in motion. It did start quite smooth, and it does kind of break away a little by the time you get to episodes 2, 3, and 4. They're a bit heavier. But again, I'll go back to why. I think they are very, very different as to episodes 1 and maybe 6 and 7. There's a very good reason why I think that. But let's look at the cast. You've got Josh Duhamel playing Sheldon Sampson. If you look at him in the comic and you look at Josh Duhamel with his grey wig and beard, it's exactly the same. You couldn't get any better cast. Now, Josh Duhamel comes across like very, very strong, big dad quality, but holds a superhero kind of look about him. He carries the weight of a superhero, is basically what I'm trying to say. He's very, very good in the role. And I think he was excellent in this. I think he does very, very well. But he comes across as probably one of the most forgettable characters because he is outshone by a few others in this. And we'll move on to them. Lady Liberty, played by the fantastic Leslie Bibb. Leslie Bibb plays this, again, really well. Probably the backbone of this show. She's probably the moral backbone. She grounds everything. Every scene she's in, you can tell she's got the motherly quality about her, which is absolutely fantastic and so superly well cast. Superly well cast, absolutely fantastic. Then moving on to the kids. Obviously, this is Jupiter's Legacy, so we have to discuss the kids. It's all about them. It's all about their actions. It's all about, do they still hold the code of the Union? The Union is obviously the group of the superheroes who have a certain code of ethics of how to run and be a superhero. You can join a Union, very much like the Boys with the Seven, but just a hell of a lot less corrupt. Now, forgive me if I do get her name wrong, but we have the fantastic Elena Kampouris, who plays Chloe Sampson. This is the star of the show for me. She absolutely nails it. She gets it absolutely right. She's got that crazy kind of party girl thing, but a moral compass you can tell is still in there. She manages to be a badass. She manages to show kind of weakness. She manages to come across a very junkie level thing about her, and she just absolutely steals the show every time she's there. She absolutely owns this show, solidly owns it. There's another couple of people in here I think are absolutely fantastic, but I think Elena Kampouris has definitely won this. Congratulations on this. This is super. Everything that I could possibly have imagined of seeing Chloe come to life from the comic to this, nailed it on the head. Absolutely nailed it on the head, so well done. Let's move on to Brandon. Brandon is a little bit different from the comics from what I can remember. He wasn't quite at the stage he is when you first meet him in the show. He was at a very different stage from the comics, if I do remember right. But yeah, we have Andrew Horton who plays him. Underused. I think this guy didn't get enough time. He didn't get enough writing. Didn't get enough direction. We'll get back to that in a minute. Because it's a key thing that I think is the biggest issue I've got with this show. Great actor, fantastic, played the role well, held the character, but there was just something missing from the portrayal. And we'll get back to that. Now, moving on to someone else who absolutely stole the show as well, not quite as much as Chloe, but that's Brainwave. Brainwave was amazing. Brainwave just comes across just pure villainy. So if you've not seen it, you know that this guy's just... Sometimes I do think casting directors get this wrong. They sometimes pick people who you know are going to be the villain just by looking at them. I have like villain radar. Don't know what that is, but I have it. I managed to pick up on, is this guy going to be a good guy or a bad guy, just depending on how they look. You need to start casting people who are a little bit cuter or nicer or something along those lines, because I was absolutely certain Ben Daniels was going to be bad in this. So, but yeah, so we'll get to the end of that. Who else was there? Another fantastic two performances from Anna Akana, who was great in every part she was in. Again, not super, you didn't see a great deal of her. She wasn't in every scene, but when she was there, she was really, really, really good. She's got a fantastic fight scene in the last episode. And then you've got Gracie Dezzeni, Gracie Dezzeni, who plays Ruby Red, favourite character for me. Absolutely loved her in the comics. And she plays Ruby Red flawlessly. Again, really well played. Not in it much, but absolutely fantastic. This brings me to the one person that I don't like to bash actors. I don't want to say they're a bad actor, because there's no such thing as really bad actors. There's bad casting directors, and there is also bad directors. So the directors get the blame for this one, I think, and that's Barnabas Paul Athos. It just came across the scene. It was like when the villain comes in a panto. It just didn't work. It just really, it completely separated me from the show. He comes in and is the camp, over the top, just didn't work. It felt so out of place, and it just felt as if his lines were written just before he walked on set. It just didn't feel right. And I'm not saying I'm bashing Paul Athos because he looks like he might have been a great actor in other shows. I'm bashing the director for this one. And you can see where I'm going with a lot of my problems for this show. It's the directors. Now, this is where it begins to get problematic for me. We've managed to watch the entire show. The entire show was great. The casting, most of them, 99% of them were fantastic. You've got the shots, the style, the look, the art, the CGI, all amazing. But something didn't quite pinch for me. There was a glue missing, there was a gel missing. And this is where I think the problem is. It's a Netflix produced show. Now, if you go on to a lot of Netflix produced shows that have any more than 5 episodes or any more than 6 episodes, you will find a list of directors who haven't had much work, is one of the key problems for me. And you'll find that they've maybe only done 1 episode of very different shows. So if you look at Stephen S. DeKnight is one of the directors who directs 2 episodes of this show, who also directed Pacific Rim Uprising. I don't remember the full name of that because it's that forgettable. It's just awful. When you have some directors who have not had a great idea, I mean, he's only done like 4 pieces of work. And then you can move on to the next director. The next director who's done another 2 episodes, that's Charlotte Brandstrom. Charlotte Brandstrom has done shows, like her biggest show was Madam Secretary with Tia Leone, and she looks like she's done quite a lot of episodes with that. Now, Charlotte Brandstrom seems to have a theme of the different types of things she's directed before, which is mainly crime, police, drama, medical. That seems to be her key thing that she directs. Then you move on to your next director, Chris J. Byrne, who's only really directed 3 episodes of something. I believe, when I looked at his past, it was mainly assistant director. Now, that's not director. No offence to assistant directors, they all need to find their feet and move in to get work, which is absolutely fantastic that he is. But I think this has been at the detriment to the show. And then now we have the final director of another 2 episodes. That's 6 episodes covered by the last 3, and another 2 episodes covered by Mark Jobst. Now, Mark Jobst is probably the most premier person for doing this. He's done a lot of work like Luke Cage, Punisher, and Daredevil. So you've got someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to CGI, knows what they're doing when it comes to superheroes, and someone who definitely can probably find their feet, unlike the other previous directors of this show. The other previous directors of the show, they were doing things like EastEnders and crime and medical drama. And now what I'm trying to say about this is for me when the problem all comes about. The problem is you've now got every 2 episodes done by a completely separate director. You've now got all the different actors who are appearing across all the different episodes, who are turning up and doing these episodes with a different director, who maybe does stuff a little bit differently, who maybe directs a little bit differently, who maybe films a little bit differently, who maybe just does everything a bit differently, because that is what happens in the show. A lot of these episodes, it felt like I was watching a crime drama. A lot of these episodes, I felt I was watching, like, the 1920s scenes did feel a little bit like Boardwalk Empire, which is great because that's the aesthetic that we're going for. But I'm still watching a superhero show, and it didn't feel like I was watching a superhero show because it was just a mix of the way it was made. It just didn't feel right. So this is where I think the Netflix shows, fall absolutely flat on their face. There's just too many cooks spoil the broth. And I'm not saying that this makes this entire TV show rubbish, because it doesn't. It's excellent. It is such a good TV show. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Every single episode is a good way of kind of starting just before the credits. You get a little snippet of something good, and it finishes with a little bit of snippet of something, which is, I think, is a really good way to do it. But that's the writers. That's the writers that have done that. For me, this is about the direction, and that leads me back to the cast. Now, the cast were all great actors, all really, really good, but occasionally you did feel as if something was a little bit different in them. You didn't feel as if maybe they were punching or really hitting strong or getting everything absolutely 100%, because I feel it's different directors again. It's just, you can't have that many directors across an entire show and have something exactly the same. So for me, this is where Jupiter's Legacy does hit the ground and just kind of collapses a little bit. The show itself, fantastic. I could not recommend this higher to anybody. If you like superhero movies, you're going to love this. So costumes, didn't like them. They're fantastic in the comic books, and it looks great in the comic books, but I just didn't feel it. I didn't get that vibe from the show, because you're talking about so many moral values, talking about real stuff, talking about, you're passing on quite a strong message to the audience, but then you're giving complete and utter. I know it's a superhero show, I get it, but yeah, you either agree with me or you don't. Probably if you don't, just tell me in the comments, shout at me, say I'm being an idiot, but fine. I just didn't think I think they were just a little bit too glossy and a bit too fresh and cut and clean, and it should have been a little bit more real for me, just a little bit more real. Now, the style of the show, the cinematography of this show, the look of this show, directors again. We'll come back to that. Directors, kind of the problem. There was a lot of beautiful, amazing shots that were done of the Utopian. So you got Josh Duhamel sitting looking grungy with his hair, and as you've got a beautiful kind of dirty shot just taking a little bit of his face and the kind of shadows. You've got when he is Sheldon, and I think he was sitting on a chair and he just catches a bit of light across his eyes. It was very much like The Shadow, showing my age there, if you remember that comic book TV show or an adaptation. Yeah. but it just caught his eyes. It was a very much that kind of 1920s aesthetic and just crime boss looking thing, and it looked perfect. And then we get to episode 7, when we had brainwave, I think, was going into someone's mind, and then the director decided to use shots in which, I don't know, it was like some sort of cheap music video, and it looks terrible. I mean, I would put them up here, but I would have to steal it off online, and I'm not going to do that. But it was just very jerky. It just looked cheap. There was so many ways you can come up with something to make it look like what was happening. I think it was he was getting into his brain or something like that. It was bad. Of all the different things that you can do, you can't use the same stuff, the same kind of cheap thing that doesn't fit the rest of it that's so expensive. And again, that comes back to directors, because the directors are deciding that some of these shots are okay to use. That should have been maybe filmed and then went, that looks rubbish, I'm cutting it out, I'm not using it. Now, you're still going to ask me if I recommend this show. Abso-freaking-lutely. If you are a superhero fan, if you are a comic book fan, if you're even just a TV fan, this show is banging. It's got great acting, it's got everything in it you could possibly imagine. But I don't even know how to describe my butt. Let's put it this way, what am I going to give it out of 10? Geekified 10s, I am definitely going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 is probably if it just had some more solid direction in this, if somebody was just maybe slapping about a couple of the people who were involved in putting this together, it could have been absolutely epic. I mean, epic. It's got it all there, but I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was absolutely fantastic. I still thought there was amazing acting in it. I thought some of the scenes were tremendous. The glue, for me, a co-director, I like to call it the glue. Takes all the little pieces, all the visuals, all the lines, all the acting, and sticks it together. The glue wasn't glue. It was Netflix blue tack, is the best way I can say it. But that's not to the fault of anybody else who was involved in this. It's not to the fault of the story, not to the fault of the writers, not to the fault of the actors. Apart from one, but that was just bad direction. Sorry, Paul Atos, Barnabas, but you're clearly a good actor. You just panto villains are, yeah. But for me, it is a solid 8.5 out of 10. I'll be back with the boys to do another review and we have an absolute solid discussion on this. It'll probably take quite some time talking over this, because we all like to talk a lot when it comes to superheroes. And hopefully it'll be in the next couple of days, but I'm going to try and get this up tonight, still on Friday night. I hope you've enjoyed my first ever one alone. I feel very lonely. Normally I would say cheerio to the guys here, but it's just me. But I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have enjoyed it, please hit like, subscribe, share it with everybody in the world so we can keep making more of these videos as we discuss all things TV and film and geek and Funko and everything. I can do this all day.